Hello, passengers, and a welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with service to Friends and Greenwich Village, New York City. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that if you want to sit next to your friends on this flight, we have first dibs seating. That's right, you get to pick where you want to sit as long as you buy a drink from us every hour on the hour.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Max Singer. Max, how you doing, bud?
I'm pretty good, Jeff. I've been going all over the city trying to find a barber who will give me Matt LeBlanc's haircut from this episode, and they all keep saying it's illegal?
Oh my gosh. Well, Max, this week, as you know, we just said, we're going to be talking about Friends. In honor of, James Burrows recently passing and being a master of so many pilots, we thought it was appropriate to finally do the prequel series to Joey.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't been keeping up with this podcast for a while, you know how big of a deal J, F, and B is to us here at TVPL. If you want to learn more about arguably the greatest sitcom director, surely the greatest pilot director of all time, go back. We have episodes covering everything from Will and Grace, Cheers, Third Rock from the Sun, even some modern ones of his, like Mid-Century Modern and Mulaney, if you get sick like that. There's plenty of JF and B to choose from. An absolute legend of his craft, and he will be missed, and we're excited to talk about one of his bigger hits today.
Well, Max, for people who are here for the first time, maybe for folks who are frequent flyers, what is this podcast all about?
Yeah, if you found us from our Mulaney episode on your James Burrows pick, here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes, including all the ones I listed 30 seconds ago, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
And before we dive too deep into Friends, a quick word from our sponsors. Well, Max, let's dive into this world. Let's go into the 90s, and let's start off with a quick synopsis. The personal and professional lives of 6 friends living in the Manhattan borough of New York City, which I think is absolutely what we watched for the most part. But before we dive too deep into the show, do you mind going into the history of how this got made?
Today we're talking about the pilot episode of Friends, originally titled The Pilot, also known as the one where Monica gets a roommate, which originally aired on September 22nd, 1994 on NBC, and the show's creators Marta Kaufman and David Crane. After meeting at Brandeis in the late 70s while appearing together in a student production of a Tennessee Williams play, the duo would go on to begin writing careers in Los Angeles, with their first big break coming in 1990 with HBO's Dream On, which they created and produced. That show would run for 6 seasons. In 1992, they create the Norman Lear-produced The Powers That Be at NBC, which lasted just 2 seasons, and followed it up with Family Album at CBS, which was canceled after just 6 episodes. Following the cancellation of Family Album, the pair set out to develop 3 new pilots they could pitch for the 1994 season. They decided they would pitch their concept of 6 people in their 20s making their way into Manhattan to NBC, since they viewed the network as the best potential fit. Oddly enough, writer-director Cameron Crowe claims that the plot for this was lifted from Warner Brothers TV attempting to develop his 1982 film Singles into a TV series without his permission. The original treatment was as such. It's about sex, love, relationships, careers, a time in your life when everything's possible. And it's about friendship, because when you're single and in the city, your friends are your family. Over the course of 7 pages, they outlined their vision for a show at the time titled Insomnia Cafe. The pitch worked, and NBC bought the rights with a put pilot commitment, and the project was retitled Friends Like Us. When presented with the now completed pilot script, NBC ordered the show to series with yet another name change, now under the working title of 6 of 1, to avoid confusion with a show on ABC at the time titled These Friends of Mine. In developing the show, the network felt equal time with the 6 main ensemble characters would be impossible, and wanted Crane and Kaufman to focus on a single A-plot each week. They held firm on their commitment to 3 storylines per episode. The network also pushed for 1 older cast member to balance out the young ones. According to Crane and Kaufman, a character named Pat the Cop was written and then scrapped by the network. A rapid-fire list of notable names who were considered for lead roles on this show. For Monica, Nancy McKeon from The Facts of Life and Jennifer Aniston. For Phoebe, Jane Lynch and Kathy Griffin. For Ross, Eric McCormick of Will and Grace. For Joey, Vince Vaughn. And for Chandler, Craig Bierko of Unreal and John Cryer. Now simply called Friends, the pilot was filmed in front of a live studio audience on the Warner Brothers lot with acclaimed director James Burrows at the helm. His one major note to the script, dumb Joey down a bit. Good call, Jimmy.
Well, Max, I feel like I've been waiting to do this pilot forever. So let's dive into this show. And how often is it that we talk about an iconic show and we get the intro that we grew up knowing, right? That was famous along with the show. The song that I hear at every wedding or bar mitzvah I have ever attended in my life, along with the fountain that I see so many people looking for whenever I visit Central Park. What are your thoughts of this being our first introduction to our friends?
The song that taught white people how to clap. This is the most presentational theme song imaginable. We begin this episode with the iconic theme, and it is every single person getting their moment to dance into frame with their name super big on the title card. And I couldn't help but think this is the TV pilot equivalent of just putting big flashy star wipes into a PowerPoint presentation in high school, of just trying to create this flash and bang to get you excited for the ensemble that you're going to meet, for the titular friends, to get you into the mood for the hijinks of these 6 young people that you want to feel like you too could frolic in a fountain with, no rhyme or reason for doing so.
Yeah, I love, just to give a little bit of history about this, it was supposedly like freezing temperatures when they filmed this intro. So like everyone was just so cold, and then they were like, yeah, jump into the fountain. That's not an issue. Like, it's freezing out. Like, yeah, go and get wet. Like, that's absolutely safe and dandy.
I like to imagine that all of the episode was filmed in the Warner Brothers lot, but like every other pilot, they filmed this outdoor sequence in Vancouver.
Yeah, 100%. This is the one where, like, there is a history of the show filming elsewhere in other places. We don't care about that for this episode of a pilot-focused podcast, but like, that would be so funny if you just heard Matt LeBlanc be like, yeah, we flew on a plane and we went to Vancouver, and then they just said, go and get in a fountain, and it was negative 25 out.
The one where Joey gets hypothermia.
Yes. But I want to talk about, the first true scene of this show that we get introduced to this group. And it is a very interesting, we don't talk about editing often, but I felt like this was an interesting case because we're in the Central Perk coffee shop that is local to this group of young 20-somethings, right? And it seems as though the way they've cut this is not only to recognize Central Perk as this third space that's going to be very, very familiar to us throughout this pilot and throughout this show, but also the way they cut it almost makes it seem like, oh, here's a thing, and then like 20 minutes later, but we're not going to show it to you. Here's another thing that they just talked about, and like another 20 minutes goes by, and another cup of coffee goes by, and here's another thing they talk about, and then the first thing of why is today different going to happen. What did you think about this opening scene to the show?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. This whole establishing bit up top with everyone hanging out in the coffee shop, this third space that we'll come back to time and time again, it is edited and filmed in a way that makes it feel like there's an indefinite amount of time that has passed, that you, like them, have spent hours just gabbing with your friends on all the gossip of the day, that no topic is off limits. These are the kind of conversations that you have with your friends. You talk about weird dreams that you've had. You talk about nervousness over first dates. You just talk about anything and everything that's on your mind. And what I love about the way that James Burrows directs, and I've seen this in just so many of the shows of his that we've covered on here, is how much it feels like the camera moves despite it being a multicam show. It's not that 80s or early 90s thing of we're on this flat 3/4 thrust and we film everything from like 3 angles and that's it. We get things from over people's shoulders. We get things from different angles. We kind of get the same cut on 2 people looking at each other. And even though we're in this room that is that kind of, open 3/4 stage, we position cameras in a variety of places to make the space feel lived in and to make things feel conversational.
Yeah, and I love that they decide we're not going to start in someone's home, right? We're going to start off in this third space because there is so much life happening outside of just the main couch that this group of people are on, right? There's a shot where they specifically follow a waitress as she is carrying coffee from the counter off to refill everyone's cup. Like, there's such a creative way of making this feel like a truly live space. That is something that we've grown so used to with James Burrows pilots that like you just don't see that often, and is so refreshing and is something that now we see copied to this day.
And I've actually never seen this pilot episode before. I don't know about you or your experience to it, but I appreciate that there's this pattern to this entire episode, which is we get everyone together in a communal space, whether it's this coffee shop or someone's home. We find an area that we can get a bunch of people into at once. Everyone essentially gets a beat. Everyone gets like a half a page to do their thing to show off why you're going to like this character. We're selling the audience on each of these 6 people. And then we go off into our little A and B plots for a little bit. And then we come back together and we repeat the process where now everyone gets another half a page again. And now we advance things forward a little bit in our A, B, C. And then we all get back together again. And we kind of just repeat that 3 times and then end it with another communal beat. I don't know how you felt about like the pacing of this or even just what your experience with Friends and this pilot is in general.
That's a great question. I'll start off with the idea of the pacing of this, right? I think that the pacing of this is very much doing the job that we've grown used to of you have to establish why we are going to care about each of these characters, but also understand why they are friends at all. And even in one case, why they weren't really friends until recently, if that makes sense. And then second, I've seen this pilot one other time before, not with this lens that now I put to pilots being like, hey, is this good? Do I like it? Like, how do I think the writing is? Do I think that they edited it good? Do I like how they shot that? Or like, hey, were there, in the case of when we did Hawaii Five-0, why are there so many car crashes? Like, these are things that I now bring to the lens. But Max, I'm curious because you sort of introduced this concept to us in the way that the show got made, where there was a hard and fast, we will not pass or we will not come to an agreement if you try to take us from 3 plot lines per episode into 1. So what are the 3 major plot lines, or why today is different that we're dealing with?
So I think we get 2 character introductions that establish why is today different. And they're different because we're dealing with 6 people. We're dealing with this living organism of the group of friends. I don't think there's a true lead in this episode, even though some people are maybe slightly more focused on. So we have Ross Geller, the brother of Monica, who has completed his divorce. His ex-wife has officially moved out the last of her things, and he is a single man again. And we have another wedding catastrophe with the introduction of Rachel Green, an old high school friend of Monica and Ross's, who has left her husband at the altar, seemingly on a weekend morning, a very early wedding time, it appears to me.
Well, yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, Ed has found herself at this coffee shop and thrust herself back into Monica Geller's life, an old high school friend who she's lost touch with. So we have 2 people entering this circle, their lives at their lowest moments, both wedding related, immersing themselves with this group.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of big life-changing moments be the reason why we've specifically entered on this day, right? and not instead of this being, because this could very easily be like, oh, we're getting a crew together and this is how all these people became friends on this one day. Instead it is, no, we have a very clear established group of friends. One person is entering because of a life change. The other is experiencing a life change as well. And then we have this third plot that is so much more inconsequential than the other two, which is Monica's going on a date with the wine guy, Paul.
But that's the one that feels like it gets the most focus in this episode,
yes,
which is so funny because, like, in no particular order, like you said, you have Monica's date with the wine guy from her restaurant, Ross setting up his new apartment, and Rachel having to learn how to function like an adult. And the one that seems to get the most weight is Monica's date with this guy, which is so 90s sitcom to me that is more important than two people attempting to pick up the pieces of their life and find themselves.
Yeah, like literally there is a moment in this pilot that I was just like, this should be a big moment where Rachel is like, okay, I'm no longer being supported by my parents and I'm cutting up the credit cards. And I was like, that's a big moment. And for them to just be like, hey, this is 20 seconds. We're also going to get a lot of exposition in this moment to make it more important about the other characters around us. But yeah, I would agree. If you were to quiz me prior to this pilot of like, hey, what was the first episode about? I'd be like, yeah, Monica fucked the wine guy and he lied to her about how good he was in bed. Like that is how I remember this episode regardless of the title.
All right, so rather than do a beat by beat of the B plot of three guys attempting to put together furniture in Ross's apartment, I have a question for you. I want to give you the professions of all six people, or at least the character archetypes of all six people, and I want you to tell me how many of them you knew in your mid-20s living in a big city.
Okay, cool.
All right, so number one, a paleontologist.
I unfortunately know zero paleontologists in my mid-20s. I'm still searching. Friends established. Now, let's go back in time, right? I started watching Friends probably around the year 2000. At the age of 6, I was convinced I was going to know so many paleontologists because of Ross Geller. And was so sorely mistaken, and I'm very upset about that. But this is turning
into your version of the Mulaney quicksand bit.
Why don't I know more paleontologists? I can't do a good John Mulaney impression, but let's go on. We have more careers to go after.
All right. Number 2, an actor, bonus points if it's soap operas.
Max, I know you, and we also know many other actors. So yes, I have fulfilled that. Thank you.
All right. Number 3, a sous chef at a restaurant who has seemingly unlimited amounts of free time.
I actually do know a pretty successful chef from high school. So yeah, that I'll include that in there.
All right, a finance world pencil pusher.
Yep, unfortunately, I know way too many of those. So we're good there.
Someone working as a barista, but ultimately being supported by their parents.
Oh, this is a funny one because yes, I've known people who are baristas who've been supported by their parents, but they got kicked to the curb really quick. So I think that I'll say yeah, sure, why not? I'm not going to call anyone out, but
my personal favorite, undefined, but has a very mysterious backstory.
Yeah, I feel like this is my introduction to, or you're giving me the intro or the handoff, the alley-oop to talk about Lisa Kudrow in this pilot, just being one of my most favorite people in the world. So this pilot makes the decision that, hey, we're going to give a ton of exposition about Rachel. We're going to give a ton of exposition about Ross. But for everyone else, we're going to wait until there's 7 minutes left in this pilot to give you the exposition you need to know about them as a human being. And we decide to do this with Lisa Kudrow and her character. And I am just enamored. Right after she gave that funny little, it was like maybe a 3-sentence, 4-sentence monologue about her background, I was just like, all right, cool. I need to know every single thing about this person. Why was there a spinoff called Joey? I need the prequel called, I need the prequel about this character immediately.
Yeah, what I really appreciate about the comic relief in this ensemble with Phoebe and Joey, characters who kind of play to the sidelines a little bit more, they're mostly there to be set up for jokes, is both Lisa Kudrow and Matt LeBlanc get at some point in this pilot a monologue that, to me, I just said, though, that's the first audition side right there. And it's Lisa Kudrow's story of coming to New York City, and it's Matt LeBlanc's parallel of women to ice cream flavors. And in both of those, I was like, yeah, this is the first audition. This is like the half a page that you go in and read against the casting director that gets you this role. And I really like how these supporting people, I'll throw Chandler in there too with Matthew Perry, they're kind of just there to spike the ball when it gets put up by the 3 people whose plot lines we're following more.
100%.
And like I said, everyone kind of gets a half a page at a time to shine. Everyone gets little moments in the sun. And so we're going to take the quadrant and we're going to make it a hexagon, I guess. The quadrant becomes a hexagon today of like, how do all 6 of these people cross against each other? How do we get Rachel and Phoebe in a scene? How do we get Ross and Monica? It's the Geller siblings. How do we get any combination of 6 people? And that's a lot of combinations.
Yeah, it's a lot of combinations that you can. Yeah, it's a lot of combinations that you can make, right? Which is awesome. And I'm just sitting in a writer's room being like, holy shit, like what I can't believe we haven't done a Phoebe and Ross based episode yet. Like, what's that gonna look like? Like, that's the fun part about this show, is it just gives you like, if I'm an executive sitting in a room and you're giving me like the small descriptions about each of them, I'm like, so you're telling me there's going to be a moment in time where the paleontologist is talking to the woman who's the aromatherapy person and they're friends somehow? How does that work? And it's just like, yeah, this show writes itself in many points.
And there's little crumb drops in here too that, as an audience and as someone in the writer's room, are kind of giving you free will for what's to come next. Whether it's establishing that Joey's an actor, but they say like you may know him from this very weird regional like theater production that's so absurd and over the top. Great. We know that every single time Joey acts in something, it is like off to the races for how weird and embarrassing you can make the job. Every little bit that Phoebe drops in her monologue of her decade plus in New York City, anything from Phoebe's history is now fair game. There's also more serious versions of this conversation. We get a little snippet of Ross and Rachel together at some point in this. 2 people who are going through marriages dissolving and establishing that they have a history. He had a crush on her at some point, and they are 2 people just trying to find themselves again. And so you know that there's an avenue there that we get to explore, which is really exciting as a writer. And we don't ever like overdo it. We don't focus too much time on everything. We're just giving you all these little speculative bits of, hey, these are all things that you can look forward to if you like this pilot.
Yeah, it's very much here's a taste, right? Here's a little bit of a tasting menu of what to expect if you order more, right? Because there's sometimes where we watch pilots where I'm just like, yeah, cool. I don't know what they would have done if they didn't order more of this, because it very much concretely gives us what the story is going to be. And there's one story and one path that this can go.
Do you have a dish you're ordering more of? Do you have a person you're ordering more?
Yeah, I'm reading through my notes right now. And the first note that I have is, I don't know about you, but I thought Jennifer Aniston stole that first scene. And she had to, right? You're establishing that this woman truly just took a bowling ball to her life and like said, fuck it, I'm destroying it. But then as I'm seeing it, and that's the thing that I find so interesting about this pilot, the more I watch it, the more I'm like, oh, Monica is the glue that holds every single one of these people together. And this pilot also focuses on Monica as a story, even though her life isn't devolving into madness. Instead, it is, hey, how does Monica screw up a little bit and like do something that she probably shouldn't have, in all honesty, like not to judge her or anything like that, but she fell for the oldest trick in the book. That being said, I'm left sort of in this place where I'm like, cool, I don't want to do the thing of having too much of one thing, right? Like, because I mentioned, hey, I really liked Lisa Kudrow as Phoebe. I don't want to fall into the trap of it's only the Phoebe show, or the trap of it's only Joey because they said something super funny. I want to keep it so that we can still elevate them and give them those alley-oops to just dunk, so that when they throw that banger of a line down, I'm just like, cool. Even if it's divided into sixth, like, I'm absolutely fine with that. And each of them, you're not going to have the best game every single game. Sometimes you're going to have one of those people who's going to have to lead that episode, but understand that you'll lead another one sometime soon.
Yeah, I think it's like in basketball, it's like playing without the ball. It's like, what can you
100%.
do to support other people when you're not the focal point of an episode? And I think everyone plays off of each other very well in this. I think we see a little bit of both sides of the coin from certain people in it too, to show that there's like more than what the on paper description is. And it's hard to do that in 23 minutes with 6 people. And they actually do a pretty balanced job of it, I feel.
Yeah. And Max, I mean, I do want to bring us to the end of this pilot really quickly, because we do, we end in a moment where everything isn't resolved, right? We don't resolve Ross's divorce. We don't resolve the fact that Rachel is, all fresh off of supposedly being married and being on a tropical honeymoon, but now stuck living in a long lost friend's apartment. And the fact that, Monica slept with a guy who tricked her and she decided to break his watch as payment. But how do you feel about the ending of this pilot back at the coffee shop, back at Central Perk, just, being friends?
So I'll back it up a hair even before this. I really like the final beat of the main episode before we get to this chunk over the credits, where Ross takes a line of Joey's that is said with absurdity the first time, and says it very sincere the second time around, just like taking the same phrase and giving it new context and new weight. Very effective way to bookend your episode here. And then I like that we bookend the entire thing. We begin and end in this third space. We begin and end in Central Perk. And we begin and end with Chandler talking about a very bizarre sex dream of his, just this time with the revelation of Rachel has found a job to get her on her feet, and she will be working at the coffee shop. And she is officially going to be a part of this group's life, that like welcoming of the stranger into the group. I think that it's a very neat way to just like sandwich this whole thing together. What about you?
Yeah, I thought the ending was really good because it tells me most likely where's episode 2 starting, right? I love to ask that question of myself when we're watching these shows of like, okay, what's episode 2? Episode 2, we're going to be right back at Central Perk. But, as we've experienced in our 20s, there's a new problem, whether it's work, life, relationship related, that we're going to see these 6 people go into. And they're going to talk about it over a cup of coffee, but we're going to get to experience it in all of the different places and maybe even some new spaces that we haven't been introduced to yet. Well, Max, that's the pilot of Friends. But I want to talk about things that we love. We didn't talk about everything, right? We didn't go beat by beat. We didn't go joke by joke, which sometimes we do if something really is tickling our fancy. But I want to give you the opportunity. Any things that you loved about this pilot that you want to give a little bit more shine to?
Everything that Herod Wardrobe did to Matt LeBlanc in this pilot, from the
no. I said things we love, not wait a minute moments. Wait a minute.
No, I love it all so much. I love his tight black baby doll tee with kind of straight leg, true blue jeans and a massive belt buckle that looks like every single Gen Z person today. I love whatever on earth you call that haircut. I love the sleeveless thing that he wears at the kitchen table the next morning. Also, just being like in someone else's apartment at breakfast time the next morning is a hilarious idea to me. It's so early in the day. But everything that wardrobe did with Joey is giggle inducing to me.
Yeah. I'm going to, we did this episode in honor of James Burrows, and I want to give James Burrows a lot of credit for making sure that he got the best of every character and every actor. He gave each of them the best shot that he could to be able to shine in some shape or form in this episode, because there are some times where we watch a show where I'm like, yeah, I guess technically that person was there and they'll be in the next episode, but I don't see the appeal factor. I left this being like, yeah, every single one of them needed to be in this show. And I'm really happy they all were in it, because they each have a solid piece of it. What about wait a minute moments? What about things that maybe caused you a little bit of pause? Were there any notes that you have that you want to bring up?
As someone who spent his mid-20s working in restaurants in a major city, what on earth is Monica's job in this kitchen? What on earth is happening in this sequence? She is standing there holding a pan while a single person next to her is just holding a large salad bowl. I don't need this to be The Bear. I don't need this to be that intense. I need this to just be 1 degree above an improv scene where the suggestion...
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I do want to give the show credit for being progressive in the idea that Ross's wife left him because she discovered her sexuality, right? But at the same time, there were some lines that they said about her being like, hey, you didn't know? Like, all these sort of things that I was just like, all right, yep, this was 1994 every single day of the week.
It was 94. And it was the first Clinton term.
Give it fault, but I just did sort of say like, oh no, wait a minute. Like, this does not fit too well. All right, Max, well, we do have one more question, and that is an in-flight question. And our in-flight question this week actually came from my wife, Alex. Alex in St. Paul, as we have it in the doc. And just in the conversation of us talking about, I mentioned, oh my gosh, I can't believe James Burrows died because he was such an influential person to TV. She asked just a very simple question to me that touched me, which was, hey, what's your favorite pilot he's ever done? What's your favorite show he's ever done? And so you can talk about one that we've talked about on the show, maybe even talk about one that we've never done. But what is your favorite James Burrows pilot?
Favorite Jimmy Burrows pilot has to be Cheers for me. And it goes back to a little bit of what I was talking about with the blocking and the camera work in Central Perk in this episode, but on a much larger scale. So if you have seen Cheers in any extent, or go back and listen to our episode on Cheers, they built the entire bar on the soundstage, and it was this living, breathing piece of set where people were moving in the background. There were patrons at tables. Sam Malone has to tend to the entire bar where people are staged and blocked at different seats around this bar. And the ability to move the camera so this entire room in a way that captures how a bar lives and breathes is such innovative multicam sitcom blocking, and just the movement and the rhythm of that pilot and that show and the way that it feels like you're in the bar. It's super revolutionary for the early 1980s. It holds up and still feels fresh and dynamic today. It does not feel like a show that's more than 4 decades old at this point. And I think it's just the gold standard for where like good comedies would go in the decades to follow.
Yeah, I think about the opening shot of Sam entering the bar in Cheers all of the time, because it is just such a unique thing, especially for a soundstage based show, right? Where you have the set of Cheers, but they made it so inclusive that you're just like, holy shit, Like this is gigantic. This is very much just like there's so much that can be done here. For myself, I was gonna say Cheers too, but there's so many.
You can also
that
say
I can
Cheers.
Pick. I can also say Cheers, but I'm gonna say a different one. I'm going to go with the world of news radio because I think that it is so unique. What that pilot is such a different style of comedy that Jimmy Burrows has done that I'm just like, yeah, no, this is so much fun. And I know you mentioned Mid-Century Modern, and that show was received to mixed reviews, but I loved that pilot. I thought that was such a fun pilot that was so different and fresh, and like the idea that was released in 2025, and I just was like, this felt innovative. Like this felt different than what we've been looking at, and like some of the new shows that we've talked about is just like the man still had his A game very until, really recently. And if that's the last I think that's the last pilot he made, it's absolutely a winner for me. So make sure to go back and listen to that episode too.
I'm thinking about you talking about Mid-Century Modern, and I do remember loving the way that was framed and blocked as well. And this is the tangent, but I promise it's related. I just saw Disclosure Day recently, and
yeah,
I left that theater being like, wow, like Spielberg still has the fastball. Like there's the ability to frame a shot, to capture an image, to get something from the way you conceive it on storyboards to actually getting the visuals of it. If you're good at that and you can continue to do it for decades and decades and decades, like keep doing it. And as we get further along into Burrows' career, like he could still do it. And you see these people who are just masters of their crafts who create such interesting visuals, things that feel fresh to watch an entire scene play out in front of you. That is hard. Like you could have good performances, you could have a tight script, but if everything is just smash cut close up and everything is dark, it's not as interesting. And even shows that weren't the best things that Burrows worked on, at least we've done some of them, at least they always look interesting.
That, but also just to add one more bit, blocking, shooting, and getting the best performances out of the people and out of what he was given is something that there's a reason. When you look at his IMDb and you look at every pilot up, he did over 50 pilots. That's insane. Like, and there's a reason he got brought in because they said, hey, we need to get the best so we have the best shot of excelling and getting picked up for a full season. Bring in Jimmy, right? And I think he left an amazing legacy because of that. But Max, thank you for your answer. And Alex, love you. Thank you for your in-flight question. If you have an in-flight question that you'd like to submit to the podcast and be like Alex, you can submit those at tvpilotslicense.com. You can also leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text message at 213-290-1713. We also take those on Instagram. Before we go into the lengthy history of this show, a quick word from our sponsors one last time. All right, Max. It's time to buckle up, Buttercup, because we're going to talk about the history of this show. This show had 10 seasons and 236 episodes, a spinoff in Joey, and the reunion special in 2021, which you can actually still see today on HBO Max, along with all of this show. Let's talk about ratings. This show averaged 24.8 million viewers in its first season, and peaked in its second season with 31.7 million viewers. But the show never went below 21 million viewers in all 10 seasons. Max, it's time for trivia. What episode had the most viewers ever, and how many viewers do you think it had? I'm going to give you a couple of options. Don't worry. I'm not just going to make you guess. There was the one after the Super Bowl. There was the one with the proposal, and there was the one where Rachel has a baby. Which of you? And that second one was actually that was the finale of the show. So I'm gonna let you pick out.
I'm gonna say show finale, and I'm going to say 36 million.
It was the one after the Super Bowl, which had 52.9 million, and the show finale just had a measly 52.46 million.
Crap.
To give you some
Really fell
context,
off.
yeah, to give you some context, the average viewership of the 2026 NBA Finals between the Knicks and the Spurs averaged 20.6 million and peaked at 24.5 million, which is still less than the season 1 of Friends.
Jeff, you can't compare that. The Knicks championship was 5 guys in their 20s in New York City. This show had 6 people in their 20s in New York City.
The Knicks series took the plot of what if we had the old guy and Mike Brown included with the 5 guys and see how that goes. So that's what's missing. If you're looking for Friends, the Friends Fountain, as we discussed, you can find that at Warner Brothers Ranch. But Stage 24, where they filmed, is now known as the Friends stage, and that is still very much there in Burbank. I don't talk a lot about critical reception for shows because, like, it's very funny too, though, when something is like, I hated it. But Friends actually received some mixed reviews where people thought the characters were underdeveloped based off of the pilot. And one person even said it seemed like Matthew Perry was trying a little too hard to be the funniest guy on the screen, which also very funny. But let's talk about syndication. This show, as recent as 2015, supposedly generates $1 billion in revenue for Warner Brothers every single year. And that equates to $20 million for syndication checks for our main 6 cast members. You can visit Central Perk anytime if you go to the Warner Brothers lot on that tour. Yes, there's so much home media if you want it. And as we've discussed, there are so many episodes that we've done about Jimmy Burrows pilots, but you can also listen to our Joey pilot that we did earlier this year without any plans of doing Friends anytime soon. Let's talk about awards. This show had 321 nominations and 65 wins. That includes 6 Primetime Emmy Awards, 2 Screen Actor Guild Awards, a British Academy Television Award, a Golden Globe, 11 People's Choice Awards, and 12 surfboards to place on that mantle in Greenwich Village from the Teen Choice Awards. But Max, that is the lengthy history of Friends. But our plane is starting to come to a land, Max. But before we go, I have 2 questions for you. One, based off of the pilot and the pilot alone, are you watching more Friends? And then 2, do you think there's a place for stories about people in their early 20s living in a big city on a TV somewhere near you?
I don't know about that one, Jeff. Listen, when we went into this episode, I was skeptical about, would we enjoy this prequel to Joey? Would we enjoy seeing what our hero did before he moved to Los Angeles to pursue big acting dreams beyond soaps? Would it make sense to us? And I think that this is a yes. I think that this show does a very classic pilot example of just selling you on what you're going to be following. It sells you on its cast, it sells you on its connections, and it sells you on its tone. And the plots in this are trivial. The A, B, and C, do they get resolved? I don't know, maybe, but I bought into the performances where I could see myself saying, yes, I want more. I have not seen this show, but what you're describing feels a lot like Mindy Kaling's new Hulu original, Not Suitable for Work. The pilot episode of that is called Welcome to Murray Hill, which is probably going to keep me from ever wanting to watch it. But that is the new glossy single cam equivalent of a group of people in their early to mid 20s trying to be in a big city. I think that it's an evergreen phenomenon, and people are going to keep trying to do it. You have I Love LA on the other coast with Rachel Sennett that I think is doing something similar to that. Are these things good? I can't tell you. You be the judge for yourself. But I think that trying to make it in a city with people of your own age, it was Girls with Lena Dunham 15 years ago. It's an evergreen thing that every writer will experience.
Yeah, for myself, am I going to watch more of Young Joey, aka Friends? Yes, I am going to watch more. This show is just the pilot. I think we've waxed poetically, but I think that this show has something very, very special, which is everyone has a job and nails their job. That is so difficult to do in TV. And it's something that when it is executed well, you get a little bit of a flavor of everything and you leave so satisfied at the end of the day. And then, yeah, I think that, as long as there's 20-year-olds living in big cities, there are going to be more stories and updated versions of the stories because the one wait a minute moment I didn't address is how the fuck is a sous chef in New York City affording that apartment in Greenwich Village? Like I have a lot of questions about it, but maybe it's generational wealth, maybe it's just the changing of the times, who knows? But at that same time, I think that there's going to be want to make sure that there are opportunities for voices that we love and new voices to be able to tell their stories of their 20s wherever they grew up. And I hope that we see more things like that and we're able to talk about them on this show. But Max, that is this episode of TV Pilot's License, and our flight has come to a land. But before we go, I want to make sure that folks can find you wherever you'd like to be found. So where can folks find you?
You could find me in your apartment struggling to put together furniture for you and on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
And you can find me rocking out to the Friends theme song at any local bar mitzvah near you. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. You can find the TV Pilot's License anywhere you listen to podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave us reviews. It does really help us out. You've made advertising possible on this podcast, and we have to thank you for that for sure. But if you want to watch our smiling faces, watch us on YouTube. You can also follow us on most social media platforms at TV Pilot's License. If you have a question for the show or for our next episode, maybe a suggestion of what we should watch next, you can submit those at tvpilotslicense.com or shoot us a text and leave us a voicemail at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for a sneak preview of some of the stuff that we have coming up. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies and your fingers on the dial.
Love you, JB.
Peace out, JB.